unless we lower them to make up for the increase in the assessment.
Okay.
That's so that they blame us instead of the state. The state's gonna raise the assessments.
Right.
If we don't want the taxes to go up in Kent County, we have to decrease
Okay.
the rate to make up the difference.
Gotcha.
And they give us the language. It's very, very strict. They even tell us what
Yeah.
font size to
I
use.
got you, so that it doesn't look like it's their,
Right.
But it doesn't stop us from putting an ad in the papers, telling the people what really happened.
Correct. And there was legislation
I would
in,
support.
yeah,
there was legislation in the state government last year that goes into effect where some of that language is gonna be changing.
It's gonna be this, okay.
But I don't know
No
if it
worries.
goes into effect
And that's going.
for this budget cycle. Pat will be able to tell us. So it is changing because all the counties complain about it.
You are solid. Okay?
Yep, thank you.
Okay?
Okay, I think our technology problems have come thankfully to an end. Okay.
We'll know
Alright.
that last year in the paper, right?
So we're gonna start with the overview for the budget.
Pat can tell you.
The first page that you can see there on the one that I handed out is a summary of our revenues. So you can see in total, we're looking at about $1.9 million in new money in FY '25. As you can see here, most of it's in property taxes, and we're going to talk a little bit more about each one of these variances. If you look at the next page, it gives an overview of the requests for the FY '25 budget. And as you can see here, while the revenues were going up 1.9, the expenditure requests are going up 7.5 million. So you can see the individual pieces there, and we're gonna walk through briefly what each of those increases are. So we'll start with the revenues. The revenue increases, the main one is property taxes. Assessments are up 5.6%. There's no rate increase, so, it's just what's going on in the housing market right now. Our utilities are up slightly. Our homestead credit is increasing, again, because property values are rising, so people are taking the advantage of the homestead credit. So you can see those are the pieces, the components of the property tax increase. It's almost all the assessment increase. The next highest
Pat,
revenue.
before you move on, can
Sure.
I ask a real quick question?
Sure.
We were just discussing about the ad that has to go in the paper.
Yes.
And the state of Maryland increased the property tax assessments, and they give us a particular language that has to be put in the paper.
So
Correct.
they put something in and they've moved away from that. I think that this is gonna be the first year that we do not have to place that ad in the paper.
Really?
And I'm hopeful because it's very confusing. What it tells people basically is that if the assessments go up and you don't lower your rate to offset the increase in the assessed value, that you basically have a property tax increase.
But
It's
from
always
what
been-
I used to read, it didn't say it like that. It said that Kent County Commissioners increased the property
Property
tax.
tax. It's a very confusing ad. There's been a big pushback against it. We're checking upstairs, but I do not believe we are going to have to run that ad this year.
How about that?
That's what I was thinking, either the language had either dramatically changed
Mhm.
or,
And if you change your rate, I think there is language you have to put in there, but it is not the language it used to be. That was so confusing to everybody.
So is this something that you coordinate, if in fact we have to do it, your
Yes.
office coordinates?
Yep, we run the ad.
I would ask that if you have to run that ad, that we know about it before you do it.
Sure.
Because we may want to, and this is just me personally, we may want to offer some explanation on behalf of the commissioners.
And you just can't alter the ad in any way, shape, or
I
form.
understand.
So you could put something right next to it in the paper if you wanted to.
If I had to buy my own ad, I would.
They're very specific, down to the font. If you don't have the right font in that ad, they can disallow your property tax rate and make you implement the constant yield rate. So we're all the tax offices all across the state are breathing a collective sigh of relief that we don't have to run that anymore.
Let's hope we don't. But I mean, the citizens of the county need to understand what's going on here.
Yes, it's definitely not a rate increase, it's just reflective of the market. Okay, so the second largest increase was kind of in our other category, and that's, again, reflective of what's going on. We just, our interest income is way up because we're experiencing higher interest rates. So we're gonna see about $400,000 in more money there. The recordation and property transfer taxes, budget to budget, it's going up about 15%, so that's what that 302,000 is. But actually, it's a decrease from where we actually landed in 2024. Because 2024 came in way over budget. And again, that's reflective of the market, but what we're starting to see is a slowing of the market, so that income is coming down in total. Okay. Other taxes, our biggest change here is in our short-term rental tax. We are projecting that, when we implement this new program, that we're going to see more revenue, so we've kind of have an estimate in here that Jamie and her team have worked on. Lease proceeds. One of the things that I wanted to mention is the leases, both on the expenditure side and on the revenue side here, are not included in this first draft of the budget. We're still waiting for numbers from Enterprise, so the leasing numbers just aren't incorporated in here, but will be shortly.
Pat, how's that 1,000,009 stack up against years past?
The 5% assessment value that's driving it is a little high. I think we've usually been typically a little lower. I think we've been running around 2 or 3%. That drives most of that. The other thing too, Ronnie, is the income tax is flat. If you go back to that first page, we're not expecting, an increase. So we're hoping that it's going to stay level. Right now in '24, we're tracking right on line with our $17 million that we budgeted. So we're leaving it flat pending the next state estimate.
We've went through budgets before with a lot less than $1.9 million.
Oh, we have. I mean, in your time and my time, I think we've run the gambit from the hundreds to the, to the millions, so.
In the $500,000
Yeah.
times, I mean, yeah.
Absolutely. And the intergovernmental funding, we have an increase in highway user funding, which is always good to see. We're never going to get back to where we were, but it's good to see it picking up. We have a decrease in our municipal ambulance revenue, some pass-through grants. And we didn't project the state blueprint funding. That was one-time money last year that we got from the state, so we really haven't heard anything yet about whether that's going to continue. So those are the main decreases in revenue. So now if we talk about the expenditures, we'll start with Kent County Public Schools. So the minimum local appropriation, which is the new language instead of maintenance of effort, our requirement to fund Kent County Public Schools is $19.9 million. It's just under a $250,000 increase from what we funded last year. The additional request from the school is another $932,000, bringing the total request to just under $1.2 million. And I'm sure we're going to talk a lot about that during the budget. One of the next largest increases is in salaries. This budget includes the request for 8 new positions that you can see listed there for a total of just over $450,000. We have a 6% salary increase built into this based on our survey of surrounding jurisdictions. Clearly, we'll also be having conversations about that. There's a full year impact of the January increase because it was only in for half a year and now it's in for the full year. And we had some turnover. So those are the main components in the salary increase. Benefits. When you add the people, we have to add the benefits. So there's about $330,000 in there for the new positions. Our workers' comp has taken a really big increase, so I'm not sure. We have to look at the change in our discount based on our experience, but that's going up. We have a 10% estimated increase in health insurance from our vendor, and all of our pension rates went up. So it's kind of the picture on the benefit side. County allocations. This is another area where we're seeing an increase, and we have several new requests for the first time this year. But you can kind of, the increase is a little over $530,000, and you can see the list of the agencies that are requesting additional monies. And some of them are first-time requesters.
Can you tell us which ones are first-time requests?
The Bayside Hoyas, the Greater Rock Hall Business Association, and there are 2 smaller ones that are lumped down in the other agencies. One is Horizons, and the other one was really small for $1,000. I can't remember off the top of my head.
WCTR has requested, but has never been funded.
That's correct, yes. Yes. Okay, and as far as operating expenses, our department heads are gonna talk about this probably, in detail today, but you can see the departments that are, experiencing operating increase from the highest to the lowest there. We have 2 departments going down and most of the rest of them showing increases. So, everybody who presents today will talk about those areas in their budgets. Transfers to other funds. This budget assumes that, we'll pay cash for the capital at this point. We have just under $3 million of capital projects. We also have increases in the transfer to the Kent Family Center and the local management board, and those will be addressed in their presentations today. Capital, we have capital requests at just a little over 2.2 million. And again, most of it's in public works, as you can see there, the majority in roads, and some environmental operations and buildings and ground maintenance. And again, the presenters today will talk about their specific capital requests, so you'll hear more about those. And that's really a summary of the main ups and downs. Not sure if you have any questions, or? Again, it's a really daunting starting point. So right now, the expenditure requests exceed the revenues by $8.5 million, if we were to try and balance it without using any fund balance dollars. So, as far as the presentations, I thought that I would start with the finance office so that we can talk about the format. The finance office budget is kind of one of the smaller administrative budgets, but just to refamiliarize yourself with what the presentations are going to look like. So the first page of everyone's presentation is going to be a summary by category, and that's going to show what the FY24 projected numbers are, the FY24 budget numbers, and the FY25 budget numbers, the dollar increase budget to budget, and the percentage increase budget to budget. The salaries are mostly driven by the 6% increase and the full year impact. Departments that are requesting new positions will certainly be talking with you about those today. The benefits are really just the culmination of changes in coverage and all the increases we're seeing in our various benefits. The part that most of the departments will be focusing on is their changes in their operating and their capital. In the finance budget, we don't have any capital, so this is probably not the best example, but you can see that the operating budget is going up 6.7%. So the next slide will be the highlights and would talk about what is making up those increases.
Did I understand you to say that you have a certain amount of salaries built into this?
6%.
What you're doing, 6%?
It's actually, when you put the 6% with the full year impact of the 2% we did in January, the baseline is a 7% increase in everybody's budget.
Say that again.
So there's 6% for fiscal year '25, but because we did the 2% and it was only in there for 6 months, when I put it in here for 12 months, the net effect is it raises it another percent. So there's really 7% increase in here
Gotcha.
for those two things. Okay, so in the finance budget, and, all the departments will talk about, what their ups and downs are. So in ours, they're raising the postal rate, so that's the largest increase in our budget. In IT services, we're seeing an increase in the homestead program billing, and that comes from SSTAT, and we have absolutely no control over that. And so we have a small increase in actuarial services and an increase in our auditor's contract. So as the departments go through it, if they had capital or capital projects, they would also be on this highlight page. And so it's really just kind of meant to be a good overview about what everybody's top side numbers are in their requests.
And Pat always lumps together the smallest of the items and calls it other. So that's not,
Yeah.
it's usually a combination of little tiny accounts. You can't point to one specific line.
Okay, so with that, I think we're ready to get back on track. So you have the schedule in front of you. And,
So I have a legality question for the
sure,
procedure for the workshop. if in fact there's something that we see during the review of the, budget that we feel is important enough that we're probably going to fund, would it be appropriate to make a formal, or do I need to wait till the meeting tonight?
No,
No.
To take it from
we
contingency.
adopt the budget with one
Once.
motion.
Yeah.
But if you feel strongly that something should or should not be funded, by consensus, Pat builds it into the next week's budget work session.
Well, why can't we use the contingency money that we have in FY '24?
Oh, you
You
absolutely,
want to pay for something this year,
That's what I'm
then
suggesting.
tonight,
Absolutely.
you can absolutely make a motion.
But it has to be done at the night meeting, not
Correct.
now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was my question. Thank you.
okay, so. I think I left mine. Give me a copy of the report, Sean, I can. Sorry. Okay, so up first is the state's attorney.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
Morning, Brian.
Good to see you all again so soon. So I think if you gentlemen, there's not a whole lot of change with the state's attorney's office budget overall. The increases are generally, inflationary increases. Cost of everything goes up, so therefore we need to increase what we request in order to supply the office with certain products, so we can operate. I think it's pretty straightforward and basic. I think the one big request we're making, as we've made for the past several years, is to add a prosecutor to the budget. Add a prosecutor to the office, yeah. So, and I've presented a memo to you gentlemen, kind of outlines or basically lays out the reasons for that request. I'm happy to answer any questions about that. I think it speaks for itself. I've presented two options, either a full-time prosecutor or even a part-time prosecutor. Either would be useful and helpful to our office. But I'm always mindful and respectful of the situation that you gentlemen are in budget-wise. I've been that way for the last few years. But nonetheless, I make the request because I think it would make our office more efficient to add a prosecutor.
Thank you.
Can you tell us what the current caseloads are for the current prosecutors?
Roughly, the overall caseload, and I don't have it off the top of my head as far as per attorney. We'll go into a district court docket with anywhere from, let's say roughly 10 cases, criminal cases per day, 5 to 10, and then add another 10 or so traffic cases 3 times. So roughly your docket for the week would be maybe 50 cases for that week. But if I may, the increase, there's not an increase in cases. And if you read my memo, I'm not asking for a new prosecutor because we have more cases to handle.
Just to help with some of your programs.
Well, correct. It's not about, and it's also to help in regards to how we have to prepare for cases now. With every law enforcement agency has body cams. So we're reviewing a lot more body cams to prepare for the cases we have. So while there hasn't necessarily been an increase in cases and the workload in that regard, the workload per case has increased because of the time to review the body cams to make sure we're catching everything we need to catch. And also, and not just for purposes of preparing for the case or for the trial, but also to make sure that there's nothing we're missing that we need to turn over in discovery. And it's also to be ready for it if in an event we get a Public Information Act request for certain body cam footage, and to be prepare that to present it to whoever's making that request. Now, we don't get a lot of them, candidly, but when we do, we need to be ready to review the video footage so that we are able to provide that requester with what they're looking for, and also not give them anything that they shouldn't be receiving or seeing. So that's one of the reasons. And it's also to have one prosecutor focusing on any kind of diversion programs that we have. We have the PASS program, which I've laid out in the memo, and so you gentlemen know how that operates, and now we have the recidivant reduction project. So it would be allow a prosecutor to singularly focus on those cases, freeing up the other prosecutors to focus on basic trial and prosecutor cases. So That's really the ask. It's not really because our caseload has increased. Our caseload has stayed pretty much consistent since I've been in the office. It's mainly because of the time it takes to prepare for the cases, the body cam footage, and also to provide or have a single prosecutor focus on our PASS program and also the recidivism reduction project.
So the redaction that has to take place from time to time, that's not something that your office does. Isn't that something that the police departments do?
They do on their own, but when it comes to preparing for a case, we have to review all the body cam footage to see what we need and what we don't need, and what we use or don't use, and what we
But I mean,
provide in
you don't
discovery,
need-
but
You don't have the ability to redact yourself at the state's attorney's office.
we don't. But that's for purposes if you're talking for purpose of a Freedom of Information Act request, we'd still have to review the footage. You know, if our office gets that request, the sheriff's office is not the office that's gonna have to decide what to redact or what not to redact. We're gonna have to review those to determine what needs to be done. So, but technically speaking, you're right.
What would really be helpful to me, when you were in the other day, last Tuesday, if we could see some stats
Sure.
of the grant that we approved, your successes, and I'd feel a lot better about supporting your request if I could see that we're having some positive outcomes.
Absolutely, and actually,
And I'm not in a hurry to say it, it's just I would like to see some type of summary review or whatever, evaluation of exactly what we're paying for.
No, and we plan on doing that. After our meeting last week, Ms. Clark and I discussed, she's preparing the quarterly numbers, the final quarter for the grant. So we'll have a review from the time we really got rolling in the fall until now. And we plan on presenting those numbers to you gentlemen soon, when we have them all prepared and ready to file with the state. So absolutely, and I think you should see those numbers. And I see exactly the connection you're making between the impact of those numbers and seeing what we're dealing with there, how many cases we're referring to that project, how it connects to my request in the memo for an additional prosecutor, whether it be full-time or part-time.
I have no doubt that you're doing a good job with the program. I would just like to see the positive outcome.
And that's
So I
fair.
feel better about, spending taxpayer money
No, absolutely.
to support that.
I agree 100%, and we plan on doing that.
Thank you very much.
All right, gentlemen, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, our next appointment is on Judge Murphy, and it's number 3 in your books.
I just received copies,
Well, then you don't need those.
so either ones, yeah.
Good morning.
Smart.
You have it, Pat?
Yeah, I have here.
Okay. So we have three copies for everybody now.
How are you all?
Good, how are you?
Good. I'll give you a chance to read that if you want to, or I can just
Why
be
don't you
here.
go ahead and we'll,
Other than the capital requests, which are the lobby expansion, which I think has already been approved, we were here not too long ago discussing that. And then the Court Smart request, which I'll get to individually. The budget, in terms of operating requests, I think only is 0.7% higher, so it's substantially almost identical to last year's budget.
the lobby project that we talked about some months ago.
Yes, sir.
That's never been started or moved forward?
I have been corresponding, I think I saw Dan, we've been corresponding, there's a meeting set up with the architect, I think for the 11th? 11th, correct.
Okay, so it is moving forward.
It is moving forward.
Okay.
And other than that, the Court Smart request, just to give you a brief overview of what the letter and the estimate contain. Court Smart is the court recording system that we use and the vast majority of circuit courts throughout the state use to record and store all court proceedings. As that letter indicates, the system that we have now is almost 9 years old. It'll be 9 years old in July, and the active or normal life expectancy and span for those is 4 to 5 years. So we're almost 4 years past the general service capacity of those, and some of the parts and maintenance operations are outdated at this point, and they have been recommending to us for several years that we completely replace that system and refresh it, so it's in
What's the price
compliance.
of that?
$31,000.
I think we've,
31,570.
that's probably gonna be taken care of later.
So that, and those two, things are really the only differences in the budget request for this year than what it was last year. I'm happy, I'm not gonna go through it line by line for you. If you have any specific questions, I'll certainly answer them.
The highlights are fine.
Okay.
This
Keep the chain moving.
Court Smart, do our guys install this here, sir?
No, that's done by the Court Smart
Okay.
system. They install and maintain and
Maintain, okay.
operate that whole system.
Gotcha. I didn't see any.
And that includes, the large cost of that is, there's a server, and the way these things are stored and maintained is we have to have on-site the servers to store all of the court recordings. That's also backed up, I think, through the cloud in the event that there's a flood or a fire and they're destroyed on-site. There is a redundant system, but the primary storage system and the obligation of the court is to have those maintained at the circuit court, so they're accessible to the public.
Is there additional operating expense, annual maintenance charges or anything, or is it, that remains consistent?
I think that's fairly consistent. It's only when there are issues that arise and they need to come out for service calls I don't think that there is a routine maintenance. I think it's just as needed.
So it's literally just the capital request?
Yes, ma'am.
This is kind of an IT question.
Uh-oh.
We have
All
our
eyes in the room turn.
the IT expert in the back there. Is this system going to provide you with a new server
Yes,
that has the capacity to,
that's my understanding. I'll defer to,
he's shaking his head yes. Oh, okay.
I will second that motion.
Well, I think, like Commissioner Fithian indicated, when we have our meeting tonight, our normal meeting, there's probably going to be some talk about maybe approving this out of contingency to get it out of this year's budget.
Okay.
So,
All right, well, whatever you all decide to do,
Can
obviously.
you have time to do it this year? If we were to do that, can you get it?
I can go back right now and check with them. I think that they've been pestering for years to get this done, but I don't know what their turnaround time is. So I can find out that answer in short order and have it, who do you want me
If you
to?
could email it to Pat and
Okay,
Emily, that
all
would be
right.
great.
I'll put them on it as soon as I get back across
The
the street.
reason being, we've got some money left over in contingency. We'd go ahead and do it now and wouldn't be bothered with it next year.
I will get that to you immediately and would appreciate it.
Very good.
All right, anything else?
Thank you
Okay,
very much.
thank you. Good to see you.
Stay dry.
Good luck with that.
Okay, our next appointment is Sheriff Hickman. And that's the fourth packet.
Like we might have to skip.
Oh, sorry.
And I was just gonna comment, we're back on track, we're 5 minutes ahead of schedule now,
Okay.
so, but
Okay, well, I guess
we're gonna hop around a little
Yeah,
bit.
we'll hop around. Let's, Shamondia for the Board of Elections. Good morning.
good morning.
Number 5.
And as you can see, as I highlight, I'm requesting a larger office space and warehouse space. Right now, we're operating in 3,000 square feet. Our warehouse is stacked to capacity. Shelley came over and took some pictures and some videos. I'm not sure if she shared it with you guys, but I did send you a copy of what we are working with. Right now, we have so much more equipment that's coming in from the State Board of Elections. We have to move our equipment out of the warehouse just to do any type of maintenance on equipment. We just had election judge training last week. The boardroom that we have is only big enough to fit 10 people. We have 100 judges. We divided up into like 8 trainings. And right now, even with our canvases coming up for the elections, we're gonna be jam-packed. We're gonna have people, we're gonna have the public coming in. They're gonna wanna review the canvas. We have our board members, we have ourselves. So we're requesting to, move to a bigger space so we can actually have room to move around our equipment, so we can actually have room to, maintain our equipment, do any type of maintenance on our equipment. So what I did was I reached out to KRM because we're currently renting from KRM. So KRM does have an office space, and their office space is at USA Fulfillment at 313 Talbot Street, so we looked at that already. I did ask them, did they have anything else that we can possibly use as a location, and at this time, they said they don't have anything else. I'm sure there's probably another location in Kent County. I'm not sure where, they have like the storefronts down there by the Acme. I'm not sure if we can utilize those locations. But we are definitely in need of a larger office space and warehouse space. And I spoke to the State Board of Elections, and right now we are like almost 1,000 square feet less than what their mandate for us to have. So now, do you have any questions about the office space?
I guess I'd like to ask, because I'm looking here and I can't seem to put my finger on it, but how many, because there's no organizational chart or anything with your package here, but I mean, how many, not counting poll workers, but how many actual workers?
Actually, we only have 2 employees. We're required to have 4.
So it's you and
Just-
one other?
Just me and another person, yes. And we're going to be hiring for the 2 other employees. We're going to be hiring for them within this budget. Actually, we already have job postings listed on the State Board of Elections website, so we will be filling those positions this year.
And you're budgeted for 4 positions though, right? You're
Yes,
not asking-
correct.
Correct,
Yes,
it's in
so
there,
the
yes.
positions are budgeted.
Okay.
You're not asking for more
No, I'm just
staff.
asking for office space and warehouse space.
I've never been in the warehouse part. Is that part of is that adjacent to your office?
Yes, and you guys are more than welcome to come out. Like I said, Shelley came out and she took videos and she took pictures of our warehouse space. Our shelves are stacked to the top. We don't have anywhere else to put anything, We're still getting equipment from the State Board of Elections. So right now, we are, like I said, we are like 1,000 square foot under the mandate by the State Board of Elections. And you are more than welcome to come out and come to the warehouse and look at the warehouse. And it's really getting to the point where it's starting to become unsafe for not only just the employees, but also for our trainers and our trainees.
When we get new equipment, is that replacing old equipment? What are we doing with the old
We're
equipment?
getting additional. So we're not getting new, we're getting additional equipment. Like when I first started with the Board of Elections, we didn't have this much equipment, but now since we have the DS-200s and express votes, and there's so many different laws that's going through legislation as far as for handicapped, disabled, and, people that can't hear, we have to have this certain amount of equipment at each polling location. So right now, we have to have 2 express votes at each location. Before, we only had 1. We have to have 2 DS-200s at every polling place. We only have 1. We have big black carts to store this equipment in, and right now, we started out with 10 black carts, now we have 15 black carts. So we're starting getting squeezed, and it's really tight in the election office. And I recommend you both, all 3 of you commissioners to come out and just take a look and see what I'm talking about. It's better if you come out and see what, what's going on at the election office. And like I said, we have canvassing where we count the ballots at the office. We have a boardroom. The boardroom is probably 300 square feet. We have our challengers and watchers that come there. We have our board members, which is 5 board members. We have our part-time staff in that location, and it's so tight and so small. So we definitely need not only a bigger warehouse, but we also need a bigger boardroom as well.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Now, would you be up to coming out to the election office and taking a look?
Yeah, I can't tell you exactly when, but I'll make arrangements to come out there and take a look.
Okay, yeah, because we're there from 8 to 4:30. Just let us know. We'll be more than happy to, to give you a little tour of what we have out there.
Very
And,
good.
and right now, like I told Shelley, some of our equipment is now leading out to our election office because we don't have anywhere in the warehouse to keep it. So right now, we have some of our equipment stored in our office. And if you look at the pictures, you'll see what we have.
I can tell you that it definitely won't be today. But
That's fine.
sometime in the very near future, I will make a point to stop in and
Yeah, please do.
ask you to show me around.
Yeah, please do. Because I would like to, and when you come out, you can visually see what we're working with. We're like the bare minimum now. Any other questions? You have any other questions for me?
Thank you very much, and
All
you'll
right.
see us out there.
Okay, I'm gonna keep that. I'm gonna say you commissioners come out there and see us now. I'm gonna tell Michelle that you're coming. Don't stand this up. Thank you.
Okay, our next appointment would be Sheriff Hickman.
Well, actually, he was
late.
he was
so why don't
supposed
we-
to be here.
why
Why don't we
don't we
keep
wait
him
till
until
I-
about 3:30?
Go on with the sheriff's office. The other sheriff we used to have was always on
Punctual.
time.
And he never asked for anything.
I'll reserve my comment.
Somebody sit up here, Kim.
Somebody, whatever. Same size chairs as before.
Good morning.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for having me here today. I know I didn't really have a choice, but thank you for having me. All right. The highlighted sheets that you see here in front of you today, certainly within ranges I think that you would find to be agreeable. I would like to say, and I know most department heads do, but, I'm trying to be as fiscally responsible as I can at the sheriff's office. I think it's very important for the Kent County taxpayer to know that. And one of the things that I think it doesn't show very well is you'll see the 342.3% increase for capital, and it's still talking about, smaller amounts of money, but also with that, last year, FY '24, we had requested, one thing in particular was talking about new laptops, and that was an amount that was actually over $40-some thousand, and we were able to secure a grant for that, so that didn't come out of the taxpayer dollars, so that isn't reflective on the actual, what it says, the budgeted amount, because that came out of a grant. And also another highlight, I think, kind of gloat about a little bit. As you can see, and thanks for Pat pointing this out to me, the FY '24 projection, differences between the projection and the budgeted amount is $185,240 under.
All your cars and stuff are,
Well, we're actually, another thing that we're actually going to do today are from FY '24, we're actually going to pick those vehicles up today. Exciting, because it's been months, obviously.
how many you get?
24 is 4. We got 4. So we will hopefully have those on the road next week.
Good.
That's the plan. Finally. Takes a long time to get, the problem this time wasn't actually getting the cars, which we thought it was going to be to get in the cars because of the strike. But this time it was getting the equipment to go in the vehicles. So the upfitter could put a little bit in, and then you have to stop, have to wait for more supplies to get the vehicles done. But like I said, we're supposed to be picking those 4 up today. Did you want to move over to talking about vehicles? About what I'm asking for this year?
That's fine.
Okay.
I'm looking at the highlights of the operating.
Yes.
Because I guess I kind of have an advantage here because I understand, a lot of this stuff is mandated by the state of Maryland, especially with your canines. And we don't really have a choice about it. I mean, it's mandated by law. The academy cost, it is what it is, and we're fortunate that we're showing a decrease there right now, but that could change throughout the budget process, and you don't have a crystal ball to know what's coming down the road. And when we get to the capital part of the budget, the duty vest, we're certainly not going to allow deputies to be out here with outdated protective vests.
And we just actually printed out a grant.
And sometimes there is a grant for that.
Yeah, actually, to expand about on that, we actually, Pete Landon was very helpful with us being able to secure the Homeland Security grant so we could able to transfer and get some vests for people. So we're good for the next couple years, you know, except for like new hires and things of that nature. Where we usually, sometimes we might have as many as 4 or 5 vests in a year, and we're gonna be more along the lines of like 2 at the most. So those are just gonna be people that we're hiring, new hires.
And it's like with your tasers, I mean, that was part of the 5-year capital plan when I was there, because you've got to replace those
Yeah, and you know, the
items.
tasers are, it's part of our use of force continuum. I think it's something that you're glad to have on your side if you need it, but we don't really use it that much. I can certainly tell you that we're gonna try to explore looking at some grant funds for that, because there are some different things out there for when it has to do with alternatives to deadly force. So we'll be looking at that. We'll also maybe looking at some different alternatives to the taser. I mean, they've become very expensive, terribly expensive. But certainly as, you know, from a liability standpoint, if you have that particular item on your side and you're able to use that instead of deadly force, it's certainly something that we would like to have. And the ones that we have now are just aging in normal Axon fashion. They usually, the ones that we have, they won't service them anymore. So you have to buy the next upgraded one in order to be able to, and it just continues on and on. That's their business model. As you talked about, Commissioner, you were talking about veterinarian, that's, you know, legislative that we had to retire canines because of the law change, and we're mandated by law to have to pay, I believe it's potentially up to $2,500 a year per dog, but so far the dogs have been pretty healthy, so we've only had just little maintenance things, but you never know when that could change for us. They could have some sickness, so we're mandated to pay that by law. And as you know, everything has gone up, you know, academy costs, everything has gone up. So I think it's, you know, I think it's a fairly modest budget, and I would like to think that maybe the savings and things that we have in this budget, I would highly encourage the commissioners to have a pay raise similar to what you had last year, because I don't know about you, but I know when I go in the grocery store, the prices are just so high. You know, I would certainly think the employees would be very benefited by the fact of having a pay raise similar to that they had last year.
Any other questions?
No, sir.
John?
Just a real quick comment. I think you did a pretty nice job with your budget, and it's reasonable, and I understand exactly what you're talking about with that increase there. It looks like you're asking for a lot, when in fact, a lot of the funding that you're asking for is probably going to end up being funded by grant money. And you guys have done a good job getting grant money. And I guess it goes back to all your training over the years.
Yes. Yes, it does.
But you've learned how to do a pretty good
Yeah,
job.
over the years, yes, I've had some great guidance, that's right.
All right.
Good answer, sitting in that seat right now.
You know I had to cut on you a little bit.
That's okay, that's okay. I'll be reserved for here.
Good
Nicely
job.
done.
Good job, Dennis.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Did we want to talk anything about the vehicles that are asked for, or we?
You're just asking. I don't know what you're going to get at this point.
Well, I've asked for 5, okay, but what I'm looking at is 2 of my vehicles that I'm asking to, so they're 18s, and there's one 16 that I have that I want to get rid of. 2 of the 18s are Ford Explorers with, one has over 120,000, and the other one at this point has a little over 100,000. Now, the other 2 are 18 Tauruses. Those are vehicles that are usually used, that were used for administrative purposes mostly. So they really have about 50,000 miles on them. So I guess the decision-making process would be, do we hold on to an 18 for yet another year and potentially have a lower resale value for that vehicle? Or do we get rid of it now and maybe potentially at a higher resale value? So that's, if there would be any, certainly, it's not absolute necessary. I mean, those vehicles are decent on the road, but I think we're just kind of kicking the can down the road when we're talking about an 18 for yet another year. And I know a lot of times it was talked about we're unsure as to, with the program and the resale values and everything that gets put back into the program. I don't know what another year would do for, 2018. So that's two of the vehicles of the five.
On the Tauruses, do you know what your annual mileage is on those? I mean, roughly.
Well, yeah, well, they currently both have just under 50,000 miles. So, I mean, and what,
Like what, maybe 20,000 on them or 18,000 on them
yeah.
a year?
And what I'm planning to do is, as we roll out with new vehicles, I think maybe my CID wouldn't like to hear this too much, but we're trying to have a lot of the vehicles be pretty much all the same. So as those vehicles get up there in miles a little bit, we're gonna go ahead and shift those over to the detectives and things of that nature that have less miles on than the patrol guy would. So the patrol vehicles are the ones that are gonna be out there hitting the roads and hopefully having less miles on them will also be less with maintenance costs and things of that nature. So that's the plan as we move down the road.
I guess that, what you were talking about, 6 of one, half dozen of the other, that's something that fleet management, I guess.
Yeah.
Those cars are involved in that as well, right? I mean,
Yeah, Enterprise, they try to, they're even including the 19 vehicles as a suggested, trade-in.
Because of resale.
Got rid of 9, right?
yeah.
Yeah, for resale value purposes. I wouldn't be asking to get rid of any of the 19s at this point, but I think the 18s, it makes a little bit of sense to go ahead and, for resale value purposes, and also the ones that have high mileage on them. All right, anything else, gentlemen?
No,
All right,
thank you.
thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Have a great long day. Got a meeting after this, right?
Well,
Our next appointment is the detention center.
Morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
Ladies? Did they have a copy of that?
They don't.
Chris?
Okay, McConaughey?
All right. And, we doing the highlights for,
Yeah, just hit the highlights of what,
the medical and mental health services. That's a great amount there, but we have 85% secured a grant to cover most of the increase. We've worked with Prime Care, who's a provider, to just do the 3% increase. They wanted 4.2. Captain Wallace negotiated down to the 3% that's written in the contract. So that comes out to $22,250 as far as the increase. And it goes to, this past year's $741,669. That increase, the 22,000, bring it to $763,919.94. The mental health portion increased to right around $2,000 at 3%. So it currently is at $61,805.82, which will go to $63,659.99. So the grant will cut that $175,000 greatly. It'll take away the inmate urine testing, the professional services amount. It'll cover all that. The medical supplies will still be there. That's just for the jail itself, medical supplies for the inmates. So,
You're saying you got grant money that's gonna help pay for that $176,000?
yes, sir.
What, and when you take the grants, when you get what's left over after the grants?
It will be the 22,000
Okay.
and the 8,000. And I think that's pretty much it.
Okay.
The grant goes in on 19th of this month, so we should hear something within a month from then.
It hasn't been awarded yet, but.
No.
Okay.
It's potential. We've had it last 2 years.
I'm pretty
Two
sure we're
fiscal
gonna
years.
get 350,000.
So instead of an increase of 176, we're talking about an increase of about 30,
Yes,
31 or something
Yes.
along that line.
yes. And we have a copy of a letter from
I think we gave it, just
Prime
based
Care.
off of our population dramatically dropping, they felt it was appropriate to give us a 1.2% decrease, which is about $9,000 savings, with raising it 3% instead of 4.2, so.
And a capital project. Officer Stickler will speak to that.
A packet of the pictures and stuff that we took. Y'all know the office is extremely old and outdated and falling apart a little bit. We have a lot of vendors, a lot of programs, outside program people that come in, and a lot of people that come in to see the warden and the captain. And to tell you the truth, it is absolutely kind of embarrassing when several of them have looked at me and said, "You work in here?" And it's embarrassing. The desks, as you can see in there, they're taped up, just held together by duct tape. The cabinets I'm okay with, but if we could just get new flooring, fix the walls where there's problems, and you'll see there that it's literally peeling off. And it's gross. Also, you'll see that I understand we're all probably only gonna be there 5 or 6 more years, you know, with the possibility of the regional jail, but at least have a better work environment, you know, for people to come in and look at. Any kind of improvement would absolutely be appreciated for that office. It's 5 of us in there. And the other thing that I was hoping to add in there is like a divider to separate some of this office space, because everybody hears what you're saying, and, you know, when you have incarcerated persons that have private information, you don't want to share it out with everybody, especially when you have other people from programs and stuff also coming in, and they don't want to hear, you don't want them to hear your conversation. So it's hard when you have 5 officers in one area. Anyway. And I have quotes from several different places. I'm still working for more. The one quote that I had was from Randolph, but that was with flooring, equipment, and everything. It was over $30,000, and I don't want to ask for that much. I can do without a lot of, you know, the officers can do without a lot of stuff. Just anything to increase a little bit of pleasantry in there and get rid of some of the cracks in the walls and fix the outlets and fix the ceiling tiles that are broken and falling apart and fix the floor that is just, no matter how hard you scrub it, it doesn't come up and it stays just the way it is, scarred and marred and, anyway. And maybe better desks that are just not taped together and held, by some glue and duct.
If I could add to that, I had water running in my window in my office this morning
That's
from the
hard to
rain.
That's hard to believe. My carpet in my office when I was there was wet all the time. And you know what that does?
Yep,
It creates other issues.
yep.
I know exactly what you're saying, that when they graded up to that building, they put tar on the outside. And I guarantee you, if we were to go out there and look, it's cracked away and water just runs right in. And I understand what you're saying as well about the vinyl wallpaper that's on the wall out there. If you were to peel that off, guess what's behind that?
And we try to get office furniture in our house throughout the county. Like Sheriff Hickman, he was nice enough, we go out in his garage and there was a couple good desks out there that we retrieved. So we try to cut the cost as much as possible, of course. So if someone has it in the agencies throughout the county, they'll take that as well, because there may be some in storage somewhere that we could utilize as far as desking, because they are expensive.
So Chrissy, you're still working on getting some prices for
I still
the
am,
cosmetic
yes,
stuff,
trying
or
to-
I don't wanna call it cosmetic, but a lot of it is, I
Yeah,
mean.
carpeting, I do have, price for paint to repaint the walls but I was hoping that the county maintenance can come in and fix the damaged parts prior to them painting, we do the maintenance thing on that, so they have in the past come and fix little here and there things, but they've been so busy and it's a lot to ask, because there's a lot of cracks in the walls and little things that shouldn't be, that are kind of like hazarding, we try to hide it with cabinets and stuff, so.
These the floor tiles that are VCT, Chrissy, has anybody, have you had anybody come out and professionally clean that and then put a coat of wax on it?
No,
Because that would take care of 90% of those issues.
it would scrub off the scarring and marks and
Absolutely.
everything.
Yep. Yeah. There's several local people that do it for, the grocery stores, the restaurants and stuff like that. It would make a 100% difference.
It's rather gross.
Yeah, I get it, but
Coordinate with Dan.
Okay,
your tile there, it's not green, it's white, right?
yeah, it's like brown.
In the sheriff's office, we actually put new tile down. It wasn't anything real expensive, on top of the white tile, because there was so much traffic. That building's been there probably close to 40 years, maybe longer. I don't know exactly what the date is on the,
I think it's 82.
you're probably about right. And it's in bad shape. And we tried to clean them. We actually stripped them with a high-speed buffer and all. Now, the deputies themselves and myself actually did the work. But it got us by for a little bit. And I think that's what we need to try to do, is we try to get by a little bit now, because we all know we're talking about a regional jail at some point. So, we don't want to
Yeah, I
dump a
guess
whole
that
lot
was
of
my-
good money into it.
I will be happy.
But we want it
whatever
clean.
Improvements that will help me.
We want it clean, and exactly what you're talking about with the wallpaper coming apart and all this, that needs to be cleaned behind that and then put back on, and a fresh coat of paint. The ceiling tiles, just pop them out and replace those. That's, I understand what you're saying, and we want you working in a clean work environment. The building's old, and at some point, we're gonna have to decide whether we're gonna continue to maintain that building or take it down. And right now, we don't know at this point.
And any kind of improvement would be a great help.
We hear you.
As soon as you get your figures and stuff together, make sure that Pat's office, we see them. And if it's not a lot of money, I mean, if it's nothing outrageous, get it to us now, and maybe we can
Do it in this.
do it this year or something.
I do know, and I looked at it today, there is gonna be extra funds in this year's budget of medical that will not be used. I do know that.
Well, as we get closer, if there is, we might be able to allocate that extra,
Just move the money over, yeah.
yeah.
Anything else?
I think that's it.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
And Captain Wallace, last time I was out, and maybe Dan would know, out to the Public Works, or not Public Works, but the grounds maintenance building, there was a storage building there that had some equipment in it, some furniture. I don't know whether it's still there or not.
I can check our.
But there might be some desks that you can get by with.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I know we've had some from Human Resources, because that was the email. Some, I don't know where they're at, but. Yeah.
Jim, you don't know where is Jim here? You don't know where your desk went when we redid your office to you? They go to storage, or?
I think somebody claimed one of the desks.
At least one got claimed, I don't remember by whom. Oh, Bill has one.
Well, go to Bill's office and get that.
In there.
Thank you.
So,
Next up is Pete.
Morning, sirs, ma'am.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm a rookie at this, so I'll just try and go through the highlights at best. My office is broken down into three separate sections, and I guess before I should start, I should remind everyone that Office of Emergency Service is located in the basement of the Correctional Center and Sheriff's Office, and we appreciate everything that Dan and his team at Public Works do to keep us above water. Real quickly, in emergency management, our salaries increased, but our benefits went down due to payouts and employee tenure. In our operating expenses, there is an increase in the emergency notification system. We'd like to move to Everbridge. It's far superior, better product. And it's actually, it geofences with cell phones, which is one of the things we run into a problem with Code Red right now. It's landline based, so a lot of our visitors who come to the county or traveling through can't really be affected by it. Everbridge has the ability to geofence with cell phones. Also, we'll have interoperability with Queen Anne, Caroline, and Cecil counties. That'll help. One of the things that isn't in there, but I'd like to consider, is an actuarial study for paramedics, EMTs, similar to LEOPS. 911 specialists are kind of, the legislation to have them included in that study has been shelved, again, this legislative session so far. But I think one of the things that I would like to do is see if there would be funding available to contract someone like Bolton Partners, or I talked to Tom Vincent, and he said a study cost would come under $10,000, but I think if we could look into LEOPS and having that available, it might help with our recruitment and retention. So that's something that I might have to add later. The other increases are software increases from our EMS scheduling account, and then the cost of water. We had a vendor that wasn't delivering water or delivering old, so we went to a better vendor. Probably the biggest bulk of the expenses in Office of Emergency Services comes from emergency medical services. And there's a couple requests that I'd like to kind of discuss. One was a paramedic and,
Me. So that would be packet number.
oh, two, sorry.
8. We're embarking upon 8.
It's okay. Sorry. Okay.
Go ahead. Emergency medical services.
Yes.
I discussed the request for a paramedic instructor position. It's a new thought in that one of the things that King County OES has never had is an in-house skills or proficiency instructor that can also backfill medic vacancies. And it would also allow for CPR and AED training for the rest of the county. Additionally, and Commissioner Price, I believe I talked to you about this in the past, with the EMT requests, one of the problems that we have, there are 4 part-time positions, and the part-time personnel were not compelled to fill positions. So they were personnel or slots available that weren't being taken. We have rectified that with some guidelines in OES, and that should be less of a problem. But I thought the request for considering expansion of the EMTs was kind of timely, as I believe that there are some requests coming in from other jurisdictions that might necessitate the need for us to expand the services that are provided in the county. In operating expenses, the personal protection equipment that is given to the medics is all expired. And I can tell you in the past that the equipment used to be tailored or fitted to each individual member. I don't see that as a requirement or necessity. I think that if we have a pool of equipment in different sizes available at the facilities, it would be a little better and costly way to have the equipment available should a medic need to don it before they go to a certain call. They know what they're going to when they're there, or they could have it brought to them rather than have every single person have a bag of equipment that does nothing except depreciate and become obsolete when it's used very rarely.
So, did I understand you to say that the PPE equipment right now is expired?
That is correct. That's why it became kind of a concern to me when that was discovered.
And you were asking for $10,000 there.
Yes, sir.
I don't think we should have expired equipment.
Nah, I was just getting ready to say, sounds like we're gonna need another
And that might be
request.
an item
That
that
might
if
be
you get
another
to it
item
sooner
tonight.
than later.
That
I
we
would
might try to
appreciate that.
talk about tonight.
Yes, sir.
And that's something you could turn around by the end of the fiscal year, if that
Yes.
money were given to you.
Yes. The education increase, one of
Pete, I'm
the,
sorry, but
yes, sir.
what exactly was that equipment that's expired?
Well, it's protective equipment. I guess the easiest way to, it used to be called turnout gear, but it's heavier clothing that protects you from bloodborne pathogens.
Okay.
Or, splashes, spills, anytime that you're going into a hazardous area, you would suit up with that rather than just the normal clothes. I mean,
Okay.
don't get me wrong, that's why we have wash facilities or decon rooms at our facilities. So if something does happen, you can wash it down, but this would be equipment that could be more easily donned and would give better coverage and protection to our
Type of
employees.
hazardous clothing and stuff that you're
Yeah,
wearing?
almost, people, like a Tyvek suit that you see somebody wearing. Could be nylon, could be person in the department outfitted. It's, having small through double XL available on a rack at the office is a more cost-effective way of providing protection.
I just read something on,
There's very up to their own for budgeting training with CPR and/or AEDs. And I think if we could encapsulate that under the AED, or under the OES
And for some reason, it's fallen short. It hasn't been accomplished, and Director Landon and his staff are working to try to bring it back
Yeah.
to place.
Yes, sir. It doesn't take away, or it doesn't, the fire companies and the rescue squad would still receive the money that they would get when recouping insurance costs. It would just ensure that the county were also getting paid to let that go back into the EMS system that kind of pays for the services that are performed. I'd be switching to, is it tab
9, communications.
in communications? The increases in the communications are for a couple different things, mainly. In communications, the repair and maintenance expenses are due to vendor increases with Motorola happens to be the vendor that we use. One of the interesting things, and I know it's been asked for in the past, was the backup 911 center out at Department of Public Works. One of the issues is that when it was put in, it worked fine, but now that the state has moved on to P25 compliant communications gear, not everything works the way that it should when they have to switch out to the backup 911 center. It would be my hope that it'd be a redundant center, that all they would have to do, and if there's a power failure or weather or for some reason our 911 center had to move out to Public Works, that it would work the same exact way. Again, the radio and computer systems are now obsolete. There are workarounds that our communications chief, Brad Russum, and his crew are able to do, but I really don't want to be at the helm when there could be a call that's missed or a radio, a radio demand for help because of a obsolescence issue. And one of the things with the 911 center is we service all the citizens, all the calls come in. If you're interested, I could give you the number of calls and how they've increased. But I want to keep our ability and proficiency, which is very high, up to do that and keep it in lockstep with if we have to move out to that system. I know it's been asked for in the past, and I know it hasn't been funded, but it's getting to the point where it will not be a backup system anymore if the equipment that we have in there is obsolete, for lack of better words. And that's a very sizable request. I can tell you that working with the vendors and/or Chief Russum, that we could probably get that reduced if you were to consider it.
Right, maybe getting some grants or
They're
911 money available for something like this?
only for certain things. 911 won't pay for computer systems and/or radios. They pay for telephone lines and, call answering. So it's a twofold. We would definitely go after everything and anything we can from the 911 board, but it's not going to cover that whole thing.
Pete, that radio console that you're talking about, that for that backup, I mean, that's not, does that mean that the entire backup out there to County Roads built out there is, it doesn't work properly?
No, sir.
Is it just a certain portion of it?
Certain parts of it, technically, Chief Russum and his crew have to use workarounds, for lack of better words.
That money would not be to replace the whole thing, it just replace the part that's obsolete?
Working part, yes, sir, working parts. It's not a whole,
Right,
tear
but
down,
it's
drag out.
Much more expensive than that.
Yes, sir.
That's just money to replace the parts that are obsolete.
Keep it up and running, yeah.
I got you.
When it was built in its day, it was state-of-the-art for backup, and unfortunately, that day has come and gone in the past. And I know it's been asked for, and probably up until it happens, it will continually be asked for. And it's my hope that Brad and his crew can keep, patching together what they can to make sure that it's up and running and they don't drop a call or miss radio traffic. And in conclusion, unless you have any other calls or any other questions, one of the things I've tried to instill, and there's an amazing team out there that I don't want to say they've been starved in the past, but we've been able to work together, give them guidance and direction in creating accountability that wasn't there and people wanting to stay and doing the best that they can with the most equipment that they have. And I know their asks and their increase in this budget, but they're not really wants, they're more so needs if we're to continue to be the state-of-the-art office that we are. And I appreciate everything that you've done since I've been here, and I'm sure will continue to do, because everybody in the county has pitched in to make sure that the Office of Emergency Services can provide the services that all of our citizens and visitors deserve.
Thank you. You're doing a good job at it too. We appreciate everything you do.
Absolutely.
Going back to the backup 911 center,
Yes, sir.
you said there was a way that we might be able to trim that down some.
I hesitate to give you a price, but
I mean-
Brad and I have been spitballing, and we could save a third of that in the projection. That's a vendor projection, but I think working smarter, we could probably, I don't want to say cut it in half, but we could definitely reduce it a sizable amount.
When you give a firm number, can you give that to Pat so we can
100%.
revise it?
Yeah, I didn't want to provide that without being laughed out of the room for asking for it to begin with, but we can work towards that. I know Brad has been doing that.
And is this something that we could possibly do in stages, Pete? Just throwing it out there, part of it this year, part of it next year?
Yeah, that's a technical question
Okay.
that I think that Chief Russ can better answer. I know they've been doing that all along, so the ability to keep doing that, we might be at a point where I don't want to say it's all or nothing, but I think it's really got to be a concerted effort to pretty much clean house and make sure we have what will work and what is P25 compliant. Anything else?
How's their, if you don't have anything else, how's their new building coming?
Well, Dan Mattson is here.
Well, I was hesitant as to wait, to talk when he come up here, but I'm sure you two have been talking about this project.
It is moving, I don't want to say surprisingly, I'll say pleasantly forward with the push from one of the three commissioners sitting in front of me. I think, I said one of the three. Dan's team has done everything they have. I think working with Chief Quinn, it will be a building that not only will suit the needs that we have right now, but allow for a little bit of expansion too. And like I said, I can already tell in the EMS world, there will be, if not true expansion, there'll be a request from some other municipalities asking OES to provide more services. And I believe the same thing could happen with, in the firefighting world. I know I'm working on having the Kent County Fire Chiefs Association come in and address the commissioners at the behest of Commissioner Price, who visited one of their meetings last week. But I think that facility is a great starting point to make sure that for the future, OES can serve the citizens the way that they not only should have been in the past, but will be in the future.
I guess my question was more along the lines of, are we close to bidding it out? Are the design is done? Where
Dan,
Where are we?
I'll defer.
Well, that's fine. And look, maybe I'm jumping ahead, but I didn't know which one of yous might be more involved in that part.
I can speak to it. The design is done, and the bid package is being finalized. I'd expect the bid to be advertised by the end of next week.
Well, that's perfect. That's exactly what I was asking, yeah. That's all we need to know.
The site plan, that's pretty much,
Yes, that is,
On the way to-
that is completed as well, to a conceptual degree. The project will be bid as a design build, so the finer points of the design will be left to the bidders to coordinate after the bid, but the plans for the site as well as the building have been developed to the level necessary to bid the design build project.
And I'm assuming we have some groundwork that has to be done prior to the building actually going under construction.
Yes.
How long do we usually, I shouldn't be getting into all these details, but the bidding process, you bid that for 2 weeks or a month?
A project like this, between 30 to 40 days, probably, is my anticipated bid duration to allow time for adequate pre-construction meeting, questions from contractors, potential bidders, and us to issue thorough addendums addressing all the questions received.
Very good.
If you can get that done in that time period, then that's pretty daggone good. I would say closer to 2 months to 3 months would be my guess. I mean, this isn't, it's a great, yeah, it's a lot to it. So.
Okay, anything else? Any questions of Pete?
I just had one final thing, sir, with listening to Sheriff Hickman talk about vehicles, and I spoke to Dan in the past and Pat going through. I noticed that there usually hasn't been a vehicle request from OES, but it appears when vehicles show up after the fact. I'd like consideration to take a look at our fleet, the age and the mileage of maybe considering timing out some of the vehicles. Fleet management wasn't exactly priority in the past, and between Chief Quinn, Brad Russum, and I, we have a pretty good handle on managing the fleet a little better and getting the most out of the vehicles that we have in service, and some that shouldn't be in service. That's just a consideration for the future.
Very good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're gonna start with administration, right?
Yes.
And the plan is to give Dan a break in the middle, and we'll break for lunch. And then he'll come back, and that way he doesn't have to talk nonstop for extended periods of time.
Welcome to the Public Works portion of today's proceedings. Before I begin, I did want to give an update on the EMS building, and I also wanted to note that the paramedic instructor position, Pete is proposing, is something that would absolutely have Public Works' support and provide some benefit to training our staff as well. I just wanted to express my appreciation for his thought of that position. But the first item I will be discussing is the Public Works Administration. As you can see, there is generally a slight increase to salaries, benefits, with a 7.8% operating increase. The operating increase is connected largely to the safety shoe program that Public Works have. There's 52 employees who benefit from this program, and we propose an increase from $100 to $150 per employee. Every employee, as you're likely aware, is given that amount of money each year to purchase work shoes, safety boots. And what we've seen from our vendor, Red Wing, and across the board is that prices have been going up to the point where I don't anticipate that an employee will be able to buy a pair of boots that meet the safety requirements for $100. So the intent of that increase would be to allow them to, not the nicest boots that they offer, they certainly could go beyond that and pay out of pocket, but give each employee the ability to make a purchase of compliant safety boots without having to go out of pocket. The balance of the operating costs, you see some of the small items that have gone down, one-time purchases for, related to vehicle improvements and cell phones. And that wraps up the highlights of Public Works Administration. The second topic is the weed control program. This program, due to a lack of employees, was rather dormant over the past year. We do propose maintaining it in our current budget with a overall slight decrease in funding, but maintaining items like salaries, benefits, and operating costs.
Which we have been subbing this out, correct?
We have not been, the state has been.
Well, statewide, that's what I
Yes.
mean, yeah, I'm sorry.
They prefer, I mean, basically what they do is they sub it out to us, and we are the ones that execute it, but we weren't able to do that last year.
Yeah, we haven't had the employees, we have seen some interest in employees rejoining that workforce, and intend to continue the program this year.
They also, that weed control, that also, obviously around guardrails and things like that, they do that kind of spraying and stuff, but they also, don't they also even do some spraying for the agricultural community, or is that separate?
They do, that is part of the program, yes.
Okay, yeah.
And now that we've gotten through some of the more straightforward, we will dive into water, wastewater services. So at the big picture for water and wastewater services, there is an increase projected to revenues for FY '25, as well as a decrease in expenses, as well as transfers. The anticipated subsidy is 37.8. However, excluding major repairs, we anticipate it to be 35%. Some of the highlights as to what goes into those numbers include a 4% rate increase. I have some more thorough context to that proposed increase later in this presentation. We anticipate a decrease in septic hauling fees. We've seen over the last few years, those have steadily declined, so we're projecting continuation of that trend. And the equipment sale, we don't budget for on a yearly basis. That's largely a function of development, private development going on, and people's need to put in new grinder pumps and other equipment. So there's a $10,000 decrease there, however, solely because we can't predict what we may be selling. As far as operating goes, we propose to replace, or we anticipate replacement of 70 grinder pumps in FY '25, which is an increase from 50 replacements in '24. One of the big drivers of operating cost increases is the chemical costs. We've seen throughout this year rather sharp increases in the cost of chemicals needed at the water and wastewater plants, and anticipate that to continue. The town sewer agreements have also seen their expenses increasing, and generally our equipment is, as you're aware, aging, and the repair frequency is increasing, as well as cost of parts needed for repairs. The debt, there are some loans coming off the books in '24 and additional in '25, with very limited debt being carried forward. Speaking to the major repairs I had mentioned before, we propose a little under $190,000 worth of major repairs. These include things like continuing our well redevelopment program due to aging wells and iron buildup within the wells themselves, pump station pump replacements, electrical wiring improvements at the Wharton Water Wastewater Plant, some improvements at Fairleigh and Tolchester as well. Those are all electrical, valves, piping, aging components of the system that we've seen either failures to or the need for repair. We anticipate that
And these are repairs that have been done, or these are what you're asking to have?
proposed for 25.
These are proposed.
Yes. Yes. We've seen issues with each of the plants listed for these components that have required, in some cases, emergency repair. And we have them stabilized now. However, things like replacement of wiring and replacement of valves that have issues would prevent additional future maintenance for years to come. As well as the SCADA upgrades to our various pump stations, that's been ongoing, and we intend to continue to provide better data in real time and alerts to power outages, failures, things of that nature at the pump stations, allowing for.
Are these things that could be paid for out of the remaining ARPA money?
Yes, they would qualify. Off the top of my head, I don't know what may be impacted by including those under ARPA, if there is available room to fit them in.
If there's what?
Available room within the funding without
I know there's
pushing
some
something
funding
else.
left over now, whether that's gonna go towards our person that we're gonna hire to get the bigger projects done, I don't.
That
if there's-
wasn't the plan for.
Well, if there's money left
There
over,
is
I
money
mean, we
left
would be
over.
foolish not to use it. That's a couple, almost $200,000 we could, I think, if, I haven't looked at it lately, but it's 300 and some thousand, I think, on ARPA money left over, that hasn't been
Allocated.
earmarked for a certain project.
I can absolutely review the available funding versus what we're proposing with this and
Very good.
see if we can
And
alleviate
we
that
have
from.
till the
budget.
end of this calendar year to allocate that money.
And that capital piece you got there could certainly be a part of it as well.
Yes, yes, and the capital is the camera nozzle for the sewer jetter. This is a pretty standard piece of equipment that would allow us to, while cleaning out lines and clearing blockages within lines, we'd be able to actually see the condition of the pipes as we do that. So it would allow us to better diagnose the extent of infiltration and inflow within our lines.
One now,
No,
currently?
correct.
That'll be an investment that you will get a return on.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
That technology, we absolutely should have.
Absolutely.
So this sounds like this entire page here might be something that we want to talk about at tonight's meeting. with
There are some
ARPA money.
other projects that may be coming forward, so I would suggest that we not talk about that tonight, and that way you can look at everything comprehensively in the next couple of weeks. You may decide that there is something else that you would like to spend some of that money on.
It sounds like you know,
I know of at least one project that there may be a request for some of this money.
I'm not aware of it, but,
It's still being developed. So that way you can look at all the projects and decide what you want to pay for from which pot of money.
Well, one thing about it, it's six,
We're on the
it's
timeline.
one or the other, it's six, I mean, you can either, one project can be, I mean, a certain amount of money can go for projects out of the ARPA. We got money left over in the ARPA fund, so we either pay it out of that, or then it's gotta come out of the general fund, and whichever one it is, anyhow, I would put an asterisk next to this, and we'll see if we can't pay for it.
and how soon will
We wanna
get
use
the
a lot of
information
that.
on the other project?
I'm not sure, but I can get more information to you about that.
Because like Ronnie says, I mean, if it's a worthy project, I mean,
I think it's a worthy project. That's my opinion, so definitely something to consider.
All right, let's go. Continue.
On the next slide, you'll see two large projects proposed, the Wharton Water and Sewer Service Extension, as well as the Millington Wastewater Treatment Facility Design. The treatment facility design is ongoing, as you know, and we anticipate to be completed within FY '25. Both projects have some outside funding, and we are continuing to look for additional funding to support, once the design is complete, the construction of the water treatment plant as well, or wastewater treatment plant as well.
Now, look, I know we allocated that $1,081,000, right, for the design of that
Yes.
wastewater treatment facility, and the contract price was something short of $800,000.
Correct.
So there's money left over from that as well. Now,
My
I
understanding.
was gonna bring that up, but I made a note to bring that up at tonight's meeting. Is there other, out of that $1,081,000 that we put for designing that plant, and the contract is actually $785, so there's gonna be $200,000 or $300,000 left over. Do we have to then decide, if there's nowhere else we can we roll that into the construction of the plant?
So,
Is that,
the
or
other-
my question is, what are we gonna do with the
Right.
excess money?
The intent was to pay for the acquisition of the land of where the wastewater treatment plant is going to go, because we don't own that yet.
Then you've answered my question. I knew there was gonna be money left over, and do we have to go to Upper Shore Regional Council through that grant process again and determine where that's going?
Right now, what
Because
we
is it a
have,
different project than what was described as the design?
no, because we included it in the application. Was
Okay.
for the design and the acquisition.
Okay.
Yeah, I like the idea of leaving it in that area for sure.
No question about it.
On the next slide, you'll see a brief summary of the recent history of our water and sewer rates. About the last 15 years. Over this time, there was a planned 4% annual increase. And you can see that has not been maintained over the last 15 years. There were certain years that the rates actually went down or were held consistent for various reasons. We are proposing a 4% increase this year, which would, as you can see, not close the gap with where we anticipated to be about 15 years ago, but at least keeps us on pace with increase from the last 15 years. We projected the difference between where we had projected to be right now and where we're proposing to be is about $92. So the 4% increase is proposed to maintain where we are relative to where we plan to be. On the next slide, there is a history of the county subsidies for water and wastewater. This is, as I mentioned on the first slide, there was two different categories. This is the pure subsidy. The actual number, if you were to exclude the major repairs, falls at about 35%. In the COVID years, we did see some decrease to that. However, this fits generally with what we had seen pre-COVID as well. I also wanted to, speaking of the rate increase, the next slide has a comparison of the county's water and sewer rates to each town within the county. And as you review the numbers, you'll notice that compared to some towns, the rates are generally in line or slightly below. However, compared to others, we're substantially higher. And I wanted to highlight this comparison and really draw your attention to the bottom of this chart because, for example, Chestertown serves a very similar number of customers, customer base to the county, and does so at a much lower rate. But when you look at the infrastructure required to support the service areas, we have 4 water treatment plants instead of 1. We have 3 wastewater treatment plants instead of 1. We serve a much broader geographic area and,
And more miles.
yeah, the 29 pump stations to support all those mileage
Right.
is, the infrastructure required and the age, the investment needed in it is what's driving those rates. So I did want to give a complete context to the proposed rate increase.
As far as the towns, it's, the more population, the less the bill, just that
The more it
simple.
spreads it,
Right.
correct. So that would wrap up the highlights. There's the personnel chart and an overall view of our 5-year capital plan. I'm happy to answer, as well as the capital forms for each request. I'm happy to answer any specific questions towards
Did you
those.
say we were gonna talk about personnel?
I certainly can. Within the water wastewater department, as you can see, our personnel organizational chart reflects the status of the division, absent a division chief right now. We do have 5 staff members under each, the chief operator as well as utility supervisor. 2 of the utility technicians are listed as under the operator with the intent to train them, certify them on a path towards becoming operators themselves.
Did we lose 1 or 2 here recently?
1, yes,
A utility tech?
a utility technician, correct.
And we're constantly, because, I mean, we've had this discussion before where we're getting requests from other towns about help with their plants. We got a new one gonna be built of our own, so we certainly can't continue to lose, and we gotta continue to replace them.
We need growth,
and-
yes,
And grow in that area.
absolutely.
And
Yes, growth.
I think the idea of training those utility techs is a key pool, because the guys that
Absolutely.
got license and stuff, if you're looking for them, it's gonna be hard to find, because they all have jobs, they don't grow on trees, and
And
you'll find
operators get very familiar with the system that they're used to operating as well.
I think we need to put a lot of emphasis in growing our own, operators, starting with utility techs.
Absolutely, I completely agree, and we have dedicated some money within the budget towards training for that as well, for that purpose.
Very good.
Okay.
Is that it?
So is Dan Bitter going to be joining you at
For
1 o'clock?
roads, yes, at 1 o'clock,
Okay,
yes.
so lunch is here, so we can break while we wait. I mean, we're running a little bit ahead of schedule. Either that, or you can take one of the other
I could go to environmental operations.
Okay.
Well, listen, you were talking about water and wastewater, and Chris has walked in. Did he have any,
There's Chris.
was he to add anything? I mean,
Just here in case you guys have any questions on
I got you,
Yeah.
okay.
I
I'm gonna
did
give you the
ask-
opportunity to say if you had something to say.
Yeah, I did ask Chris to join, and I apologize, Chris, we were running a little ahead of schedule, so he caught the tail end of it, but I wanted him to be present if there were any specific technical questions about any of the capital requests or status of any of our current projects. Chris would have a greater depth of knowledge than I do at this time on certain aspects, so,
Thank you.
thank you.
All right, then, it's
So
lunchtime, huh?
you can go to environmental ops. So the question would be, you want to push through environmental ops, since we are ahead of schedule, and get one more off of
That's
this
fine.
afternoon's agenda, which is number 15. Then we'll go back and pick up roads. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
No questions.
Okay, so for environmental operations, There is about a 9% increase in operating, and there was no capital for 2024. So our request this year represents a 100% increase. The large increases to operating deal with groundwater monitoring at Nicholson and Doolin. The increase, we've coordinated with Earth Data, who does our current testing, to accommodate and comply with new MDE guidance for groundwater testing related to PFAS, PFAS. There are new regulations coming out rather frequently, so there's some upgrades needed to the wells that actually are used for testing in order to properly comply, as well as increased testing for those items. So that represents a little over $37,000 of increased funding.
And how are we coming with having somebody come and speak to us about that groundwater test monitoring?
Yes, I have been in contact. I don't have a set date yet. That is something
Okay.
I am pushing for, though, yes.
Very good.
The tipping shores at Midshore Regional Landfill, the tipping fees are going up 50 cents per ton. So we've accommodated that in our budget. And the gas flare monitoring, this is related to methane gas at Nicholson Landfill. Those costs are increasing. That's a vendor service. And we've reviewed the costs anticipated for FY '25, which is the 1765 you see there. Capital in environmental operations is a request for a new roll-off truck with a hoist system. We currently have 2 trucks. One of them has over half a million, over 500,000 miles on it. It's 22 years old, I believe, right now, and is rusting out in the body and the frame and the bed itself. So we are requesting
Had a
for.
budget last year as well. if
Budget
I'm-
last year, yes.
I
We don't wanna-
remember.
There may be a DOT officer listening, Dan, so we probably don't want to go into great detail.
And then we are proposing a surface treatment of the roadway at Nicholson. This would be to surface treat the existing roadway as well as expand the area that has tar and chip to include the containers as well that are currently on gravel. So those are the 2 capital requests, as well as the Nicholson water treatment plant upgrade. You mentioned, I am working to bring someone in about that. However, I will note that we are currently under the consent order to complete that project as it stands today. So we have included that in our budget.
Well, remind them that that makes it that much more important for them to come over here and talk to us about it.
Yep. So, and then for environmental operations staffing, we are proposing to maintain the current number of budgeted positions. This division has been operating shorthanded in FY '24. And I'll specifically note there's 2 open vacant MEO positions right now. They have been advertised. We've had a couple interviews. We haven't been able to make a hire yet. We are looking to further utilize some of our attendants who are both qualified and willing to help with trucking and fill some of the gap in the meantime. But we do, as I mentioned, we are operating shorthanded and needing to carefully coordinate time off between personnel there.
It's the equipment operator that you're
Yes.
running short. You've got a vacancy out there for that.
We have 3 budgeted positions and only 1 equipment operator right now. So between him and the crew leader, it's, like I said, time off, sick days, things like that need to be well coordinated to ensure that we do have
If you
coverage.
can't, due to the fact that you're having trouble finding MEOs to work out there, would part-time MEOs work?
They would help, and we currently have one.
I mean, I know a fellow that's That's all he'd ever done was run, and he was looking for a part-time job. All he ever done was run equipment of all kinds. I mean,
Okay.
big stuff, and I turned his name in there to be one day to, just, because he was looking for a part-time job. But he's a professional motor equipment operator. So if something like that would help, I mean,
It would, yes.
I'll send his
We would
name
be
in
interested.
again.
Yes.
We'll see.
There is a seasonal position available. It's not written to be that type of role, but I think we could adapt our structure slightly because like I said, the help is needed. So it would only be beneficial to bring someone on, even if it were a part-time basis, and obviously at a part-time
I will
basis.
touch base with Mr. Miller again about the individual I'm referring to. I think he would be a good fit out there, knowing what I know about him and what he spent his whole life doing.
Fantastic. Yeah, and as I noted, there is an attendant now who is qualified to fill some of the gaps as an MEO, a driver for the roll-offs that we have been working with Mr. Miller as well to allow them to function in multiple roles and supplement the time they spend as an attendant with some other beneficial.
We don't have
efforts.
any vacancies for attendants.
Correct,
We don't have any vacancies there,
correct.
even the part-time. I mean, we do have some part-time people that are
Yes.
attendants, right?
Yes, I believe all the attendants are part-time.
Okay.
Yes, yes,
Very good.
yes. And that wraps up environmental. I can go to public landings as a short one if you'd like, just to keep the train
We're
moving.
still ahead of schedule,
Yeah.
so I would recommend knocking another one out if you guys are agreeable. We've got a long afternoon ahead of us.
The public landings. There is a 6% operating increase projected, and there is no capital within public landings this year, so a $9,000 decrease there. The operating increase largely is related to what I intend to be a surveying program. Basically, one landing a year would get formally surveyed. In the year I've been here, there's been several instances of people who own property adjacent to landings and conflicting deeds going back to when they were hand-drawn and 60, 70 years old. It would be a significant benefit to the county to at least the landings we have the least or the oldest data on, to have them surveyed and provide new surveys. $475 would get us one, and we would look to do that at a 1 per year rate. And some minor electric as well there. As I mentioned, there's no capital requests for this year. A couple of years from now, we'd be looking for a new motor. And in '26, we have a potential project, but for '25, there's nothing.
That project down at the Bayside Public Landing in Rockall, that
Yes.
was put on hold for another year, if I'm not mistaken.
So Bayside is number 17, and we can certainly move ahead and crack this one out as well. Bayside's an enterprise fund, and that's why it's separate
That's why
than the
it's
public
separate, right,
landings.
yes.
And it is a joint program,
It
as
is.
you remember, Parks and Rec and Public Works, so.
Swimming pool there.
Yes. So Bayside Landing, I did ask for a increase in salaries. Reason is why, currently right now, between our head guards and the lifeguards, there's only a 90 cents per hour gap, where our head lifeguards are required to have more certifications than just a regular lifeguard. And they are responsible for a whole lot more because they are actually responsible for maintaining the pool, along with handling any issues that come up throughout the day with any patrons or anyone that comes to the pool. Other than that, operating, I did ask for increase of $220 because of chemical costs going up.
And then also for my capital project for Bayside, I am asking for a pool pump, because last year we had a few issues with our pool pump down there. We made it through the season, and this was a recommendation from our, pool service operator, that he recommended that we put into our budget to replace that pool pump this coming season. He's gonna try to get it through this season and be able to go to 25, so hopefully we'll be able to make it through. The short of the end of it is, but the tall tale will be when we actually open our pool, is when we'll know whether we're gonna have to push it to this year or we'll be able to push it to 25.
Very good.
And with regard to the project you mentioned, the pier and bulkhead replacements, that design has been completed. And we do have it proposed in the FY '25 budget to fund our portion of the construction. For that, it's supplemented by DNR funds. And we are exploring the potential to increase the DNR funding related to that project. Right now, we have the county funding at $611,000. But our design has been completed.
And there's a deadline on when it has, is this, because we postponed it a year, is this the year, do we have to do it this year?
Yes, the last notation I have is that we've extended it now to December of '24, and that's where the grant ends,
I got you.
Yes.
without another extension.
And our intent there, as I mentioned, the design is done. That's not a project we would be interested in doing between now and, say, the end of summer.
Right.
Because of the disruption to the facilities
Right.
at Bayside Landing. However, our intent would be to bid it out in the very near future, have a contractor under contract, and basically withhold the notice to proceed until after the summer season, and have work at least initiated, if not well underway by the time that December date comes, which would put us in a advantageous position to request an additional extension, if needed.
I got you. That it?
That's it.
And we will break for lunch.
All right, thank you.
We will resume at 1 PM.